When airplane board and building were built, a large growth for San Diego, I think it was 1994. And prior to that, I've been working with a lot of different materials, but I'd also started working with these scrap airplane parts that I was finding from an older gentleman, Mr. Huffman, in the Mojave Desert. Someone gave me an old work table, and I built a piece called Table and Airplane Parts. And this was a huge old work table. I thought, well, what am I going to do with this thing? How can I work with it? So I started cutting holes through it with my studio assistant. And we started taking the airplane parts and sliding them, shoving them through the holes of the table and building out with the airplane parts, cantilevering these great growths from the table through the airplane parts. And the wonderful thing about these airplane parts is they have remarkable structural integrity. That particular piece, Table and Airplane Parts, has been reinstalled probably 7 times over many years. And every time we would reinstall it, it would take on a completely different configuration. And as we developed more knowledge and finesse with our cabling, our wiring methods, our technique, it was marvelous for me and Colin, my studio assistant, to see how far we could cantilever these things. When it came time to building an airplane parts, I was presented this exquisite space, this small triangular space at the museum corner in San Diego. And it had these marvelous clear story windows. And the museum was generous enough to be willing to take the windows out of the museum for me. And we anchored the piece to the inside of the floor of the museum. And then we could cantilever it from the floor of the museum through the windows of the museum out into the space of the street of San Diego. The piece that came as an afterbeat after that work was MoMA and Airplane Parts at the Museum of Modern Art in New York a few months after. And I was able to build that piece in the projects room, again, with a very small amount of steel structure. At that point, it was suspended from the ceiling. And it could cantilever from that projects room into the museum proper and kind of lurching toward the sculpture garden. So again, in my mind's eye, that thing could go out the door and down the street and over the building and be this remarkable continuum that really had no end. The piece that I built for San Diego, a large growth for San Diego, was built for that specific site. And it was a temporary piece that we took the windows out of the museum. We didn't use stainless steel structures within it or stainless steel wire. We used wire that was quickly to rust. So it was a temporary piece built for viewing for a short period of time there. However, I was later invited to build a piece at a museum in Graz, Austria. So I was able to transport those same parts and build the same piece, but a completely different piece in that grotto of the grotto within the museum in Graz, Austria. It since went to a sculpture park and is now living out of doors in a different configuration outside of Graz, Austria. So over time, these things can change. Some of them are temporal pieces. The piece that is in Graz now is theoretically permanent. But everything is always changing. The molecules in the metal is always changing. We think of things as being permanent, but I don't know if anything really is, you know, maybe the pyramids, but they're changing too. I love finding these found objects. They fascinate me. And I love finding them in huge quantities. My aim in these work, even though the objects are recognizable objects, my object is to develop it to such an extent that those objects become abstracted. Even though we still know there's a hot water heater there. Yes, I see a hot water heater but then the hot water heaters dissolve and disappear into this other form that is bigger than it. I think when you're looking at the work in a funny way, you're kind of getting a lesson of how things are held together. They're built with a really simple construction, which is compression and tension. That's basically the principle of how we develop these things. I think a lot about the energy that is in everything, that produces stuff, that pushes civilizations forward, invention forward, that pushes people to do really stupid things, and also makes stuff in the air, dust and big galaxies move around, and it's energy. And, you know, I'm not a scientist. I'm taking great poetic license with the work I do. And I'm trying to, in some way, talk about that energy that is in everything, and is always changing. A relatively recent body of work that I made is called Our Friend Fluid Metal. And it's made out of these small, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these small aluminum toys, jumping animals on springs that were made for children, the late 40s, and now they're ripping them out of shopping centers, parks. And I've been hoarding them and making large pieces with them. At first, when I saw them, I wasn't really sure what to make of them. They were so figurative and so cartoonish, and they were very odd to me. And then one day it dawns on me as I'm working on them. I get it. These are the airplane parts that Mr. Huffman melted down. Mr. Huffman, the gentleman I bought airplane parts from for many years, was of the World War II generation. And after World War II, he designed a mobile smelting unit, a mobile smelter that went throughout the southwest of the U.S. and melted down the airplane, the war fleet. As I'm looking at these things, I think, that's it. The soldiers came back from the war, the airplanes got melted down, and then the baby boom happened, and so these things started being produced. And then when I got them, they were right at the cusp when they were being ripped out of the parks and the shopping centers, etc., to be melted down for their next generation. That started me thinking about this metal, Our Friend Fluid Metal. It's been melted down many times. First, it was mined, and before it was mined, it was in the earth, and before it was in the earth, there was globs of metals and things flying around in dust in outer space, and different planets and asteroids and things were hitting each other, and the earth was formed, and then it was in there. So I think that about this metal, and it seems like this very short time, it's become this odd shape that we've made it in for reasons of our own, and then it goes on to be something else. So I really love seeing that. You know, it may just be my eye, but I look for the abstract in everything. I saw a wonderful sculpture of de Kooning's years ago at the Nasher, and it was the original, the piece that was taken to cast the clam diggers, you know, those things that look like mud coming out of the earth. And the curator was really wonderful. She was telling me that she had talked with de Kooning's assistant, and when they were making those things, he loved working with the clay. It was so wet that they would make it. And then sometimes they would come in and the next morning, it was so wet, just whole blobs of the sculpture would have fallen onto the floor. And I kind of think that's how we handled the paint, you know, as this physical thing that was flat. And when I'm making those sculptures, sometimes I think about really early Philip Guston's, when he was an abstract painter before the figurative work. So I love his figurative work, but I really love seeing those abstract things. So when I'm looking at these things, I'm kind of seeing layers of stuff. And I love that I was able to actually go through a building, and it's something that I kind of yearn to do again in different forms, because it really made sense to me when we did this, you know. It was great seeing it from the outside with the train going by and all the pedestrians walking under it and around it and inside the building. it was a real pleasure.